common exercise in this fitness environment. Let's go and do some burpees, and people put them in their programs and their circuits to get some form of physical benefit out of the exercise. So let's have a look at this exercise more carefully, because it's one of those exercises everyone does. Well, not everyone, but are told to do, and many times we don't actually have a close look at why we're doing this and how does this actually work. So let's have a look at the anatomical, biomechanical reasons of why we're going to do the burpee. So let's go through the 5 steps which I've used to analyse any exercise that's going to lead you to the truth based on logic, based on anatomy, not necessarily based on emotion or reputation. Because everyone's doing it doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong either. The goal of this is for you to make up your own mind based on logic, science and anatomy. So the first step is you're looking at the burpee from a distance and pretend that you've never seen that exercise before, and you look at it and you go, what is that all about? And obviously it's a full body movement and incorporates a squat with a push-up linked together in a repetitive nature. So yes, you can see that it can be quite energy demanding, quite physically pushing, if you could say, and it can certainly get you fit because it involves the whole body. But the question is, fit for what? And that's the ultimate question, isn't it? Fit for what? And what I'm actually trying to get out of it, is it strength? Is it endurance? Is it cardiovascular fitness? Is it flexibility? Is it a specific sporting activity or occupational activity I need to develop? So from afar, it looks like a full body movement, and you go, well, maybe it's a full body movement, but for what? And let's leave that question open for you to think about for now. And does it obviously attach to the benefits that I want, whether it be fat loss or fitness or muscle gain or strength or endurance, whatever it might be. And you've got to ask those questions. And does that lead to that? Does that lead to what I want? The next question is the exercise safe? Which is one of the most important questions, because one of the main roles, or the number one rule of an exercise professional, is I will not hurt my client. So it's not just doing something to get some fit, put some muscle, get some more conditioned and flexible, if down the track they're going to end up injuring themselves, therefore they can't do it anymore, so all those benefits are being washed away and all the future benefits will be inhibited by a particular injury. So let's have a look from a safety point of view. First of all, the first movement is the squat. Nothing wrong with this exercise or any exercise that's done with perfect or great technique. So the squat, yes, if you do that properly, there's no challenge with that. Then if I go into the push-up, if I do that correctly with good form and technique, there's nothing wrong with the push-up. So those two components, which are the end movements, linked with that transition, from a safety point of view, have no challenges at all, as long as you perform them with good form and technique. The challenge may arise in the transition from going down to a squat, then getting my hands onto the ground and getting my feet out. Now, obviously the body is designed to do this because as hunter and gatherers or in history, you've had to be able to get down on the ground and get back up off the ground. So the challenge here is that you come down, and when you go down to here, you're going to find that my back is nicely in that dotted curve. There's a slight anterior tilt of the pelvis, which puts myself in a good position, stabilises my lumbar spine, and I have good posture. Now to go into that transition, a lot of the time, not everyone, but most people will have to go into this kyphotic, rounded shoulder position, flatten the back position, posterior tilted position in the pelvis to get down lower. And they may have limitations of how deep they can go with their knee flexion, including myself, because I have arthritic knees, if you could say, and I can't go down so far. So to get down, I'm going to have to hunch down and then push out into that position. Now, I have seen that transition done perfectly by one of my students who happened to be an elite Oceania powerlifting champion. He's very short, he's got very short levers, he's got fantastic form, and he's an elite athlete. So he could actually go all the way down and maintain that perfect position in the back, all the way down, go into a smooth transition and go back up again. And it's quite amazing looking at that, but I don't see that very often. What I do see a lot of the time is something like this. A lot of the time there's not much knee bend at all, and it's like, down me, push up, and up we go. Because that transition is quite an awkward transition for the average person, because we don't have the flexibility or the control to get that low, maintaining good pelvic stability, lower back stability, going deep enough to go into the transition. So our technique is very much compromised in this position. We bend down, and the challenge when you do that is when your pelvis starts to posterior tilt and your lumbar spine starts to flatten, then you've got all sorts of challenges that could occur if you do that in a repetitive nature. Doing it a one-off, no challenge. Doing it one-off, that's okay. But if you do it repetitively, then the lumbar spine is starting to flex. And when you flex the lumbar spine, so if these are L4, L5, lumbar vertebrae 4 and 5, which is the #1 site for degeneration and injury, or L5, S1, which is lumbar vertebrae 5 and sacral vertebrae 1. When you get that flexion, you get anterior compression in that on the intervertebral disc. That puts a posterior force on the disc to go to the posterior aspect. And consider that most people sit in this position, in this rounded position, or sit on the couch or sleep in that position. What you're basically doing is you have this repetitive nature of this force pushing the disc to the back, which has already been exposed to that on a continuous way through your life, through your posture occupation, posture at home, posture how you sleep, or posture how you drive. And the #1 injury in the lower back is you start to get degeneration, because the force of the weight is being distributed more through the anterior, pushes the disc towards the back. In the middle you have your nucleus pulposus, and then around the exterior is your annulus fibrosus. And the nucleus pulposus is like a gel-like substance, like toothpaste, and it will push towards the back, start forming some cracks around the outer fibrous boundary called your annulus fibrosus, and it may start to cause what we call a prolapse disc, a bulging disc, a slip disc. And that is the challenge we have with this exercise in that transition. Again, doing it once, you'll be able to get away with it, but if you start doing that repetitively as a form of your constant week in, week out activity, yes, the squats are good exercise, yes, the push-ups are good exercise, but that transition, when I look, I've been doing this for 37 years, and I hardly see anyone doing it perfectly. And the ones I do see it perfectly are either very young elite athletes who have fantastic form, whether they're gymnasts or powerlifters. But the rest of us common folk, we will start to compromise our technique to get through that transition. And it's an awkward transition if you don't have the flexibility or the stability to do it. And what you do is you just cause repetitive strain on the joints, particularly the lower back, through that anterior compression of the intervertebral disc, pushing it to the posterior aspect of the vertebrae where all the nerves run, and that could lead to obviously some lower back challenges. Not to mention the awkward position of getting down onto your shoulders from this position as well. Okay, now you push up's fine, but now I have to get back up again, that compromises that position. So from a safety point of view, doing it once, not a big concern, even if you do it with poor form. But if you do this as a repetitive nature, or a repetitive exercise, then you're going to lead to repetitive strain injuries in the lower back. And myself, I feel I tend to avoid the exercise because I'm of vintage, I'm in my 50s now, and I've done lots of different things, and this is one of I love squats and I love push-ups. That transition, not comfortable, and I feel it in the joints. So safety, massive question mark there if you're going to incorporate this into your class. If you have someone who's really overweight with a big belly, or they're really weak, or they haven't exercised for a long time, then just getting do squats is enough, and getting push-ups is enough, and you start to put those together under a speed with that transition, then you're possibly asking for some injuries to evolve. So safety, big question, not high on my list when it comes to this exercise, even though there are some benefits at the bookends of the exercise, but the middle, not so fancy. Now let's go to the next exercise, the next question, is it functional? So is it functional to do this exercise? Well, to getting down on the ground and get back off the ground, yes, that's a functional move, and you want to be able to do that if you drop something down, or you're getting up off the ground, or whatever it might be. So perfectly, the movement in itself you can certainly justify as a functional movement. But to do it in a repetitive manner, do you need to do that 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times in a row? Is that function? What parts of life do you do that in a functional manner? So even if you look at functional or sport-specific reason, I use rugby league, one of my favourite sports. they're always running, getting knocked over, tackled, and they have to get back up again. So they run forward, they get tackled, they fall down, they get up, and then they play the ball. So yes, they have to get down and get back up quickly. But what they don't do in rugby league, from I see when I watch the game, is they don't get tackled, get down, get up, 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 get down, up, and then play the ball. No, they do it once. So again, even from a functional point of view, it's not really functional to do that in a repetitive way. They'll play the ball, then they'll go to the back, and they may run the ball up again. And they may do it 1 or 2 or 3 times, and they go at the back and have a rest, and they come back up again. So even in sport, it's very hard to see the functional application. You can see it in the movement in its own way, but in that repetitive nature, that could be even a concern, even with the extreme examples. So I'm using extreme examples to look at applying function. But for the general population, not necessarily a fun thing to do on a repetitive nature. From a safety point of view and from a function point of view, it's very hard to justify that movement from a functional point of view, considering the safety issues with it. I just did an online training session with a group of a men's health club. There's about, it's online, there's about 60 people in the event, and they're mostly of age, and one of my good friends who's in that said to me, I'm happy to do it as long as you don't get me down on the ground and back off. Now he's in his 70s, and he's found that getting down and up off the ground, he doesn't like it to start with. It hurts his body. Secondly and third, it can actually hurt him. So obviously in that training session I didn't do anything on the ground, and I very rarely do anything on the ground because being on the ground is not functional unless you're a lizard or a snake. So from a function point of view, you'd be stretching, and you have to start to reaching for justification to do it from a functional point of view. I'm a martial artist, and I compete in the world championships, and a lot of people say, well, why don't you do burpees? I says, well, I'm not training for the world burpee championships, I'm training for the world martial arts championships, which means when I fight, I'm in the upright position, so I'm going to train from a functional specific in this position. Why do I do a movement pattern that has no relation to my martial art? If I do happen to get knocked down, which I do occasionally, I get knocked down, then I get back up again. I don't get knocked down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. I mean, the referee will be looking at me, what are you doing, up, down, up, down? I just get down, I get back up, and I start fighting again. So there's no need for me to condition my body to do 50 up downs when I only really have to do 1. So again, if you start to use that as a reasoning of why you're doing it, then it's an extreme example. And I've always been taught if you justify from the extreme, then it's a very weak argument, because you're going to the extreme to justify something which is obviously not really applicable. So function, not so much. You can justify it in a one-off type of situation, but very hard to justify from that repetitive nature, considering the safety issue. Now, if you look at it from a benefit point of view, which is the next question, is there a benefit? So we looked at common sense. We looked at it from a safety, now we look at functional, now we look at it for benefit. So what is the benefit? What are you trying to do? So if you're trying to get leg strength, well, first of all, is there, using my own body weight, yes, I'll get a little bit of strength, which is functional relative strength relative to my body weight, but I also have that big rest in between each squat by doing a push-up. So when I do a push-up, my legs are having a rest and I get back up again. So from a strength point of view, there's no real overload except your own body weight. And then in between each repetition of squats, you're doing a push-up, which gives your legs a little rest interval between. So from a strength point of view, it's not really a great exercise for strength in the legs. And yes, you do a push-up, so yes, a push-up's a good exercise. But again, then you do a squat, then you're getting a bit of a rest between each push-up. So really, you're sort of combining upper and lower body exercises together, and one's going to fatigue before the other. Normally the weaker muscles will fatigue before the bigger muscles. So you're really not going to get the best of any of those muscles when you're trying to train 2 different muscle groups or movement patterns with varying levels of strength. You might be better off just saying, I'm going to get strong in my legs by doing squats with weights, and I'm going to get strong in the arms by doing push-ups. And when the push-ups, now my body weight's not heavy enough to me to keep getting stronger, then I start to do dips or dumbbell bench presses or something like that. So from a benefit point of view, legs not so high because you're using your body weight. It's not like you're fatiguing because of your legs. A lot of the time you're fatiguing because that awkward position in the middle is making you fatigue because it's very inefficient in that transition. Push-ups, you can tend to always keep doing the push-ups because you keep getting a rest between the push-ups from doing the squat jumps. Therefore you recover, do a push-up, recover, do a push-up, recover, do a push-up. But if you want to get better push-ups, just do push-ups until you don't recover. That might be a better way to use your time. From a cardiovascular point of view, yes, it certainly does get your heart up. It's quite a physically demanding exercise. And it's not so much physically demanding because of the squat, and it's not necessarily so physically demanding because of the push-up. It's physically demanding because of that awkward transition, that awkward movement in the middle, which is very inefficient because our body is not biomechanically maybe designed to go through that transition. We don't have the stability to go through that transition, and we don't have the flexibility. So people get tired more in that transition, that part where you get injured, that part which is not so safe, that part which is actually putting stresses on the body, not so much getting tired and doing the squat, and maybe not so much getting tired doing the push-up. I know when I do these, and I don't do them very often, sometimes I do them because this is a part of what's happening, and I do them, and I go, okay, fair enough, I do this, but a lot of the time I pace my way through it, be very careful with that transition because I don't want to hurt my body, and I'm not getting tired because of push-ups, so I can do heaps of push-ups, and I can do heaps of squats. What I can't do heaps of is that awkward transition, which puts the body in that very awkward position, which is ineffective, inefficient, and yes, it gets your heart rate up by actually causing maybe a bit of trauma on the joints of the lower back and the shoulders. So from a fitness point of view, yes, you do get fitness, but you get fitness in the wrong way. It's like I could throw you in a tumble dryer and toss you around, or do head spins and do all crazy stuff which damage all the joints, and you get really tired hurting yourself. You can actually get tired hurting yourself. And this is probably the same example for most people. When I see them doing it, I look at them, they're overweight, they're weak, they haven't been training, and I think, wow, yes, you're getting tired, but man, I'm just seeing your joints are getting a bit of a beating at the moment through poor technique, poor form, poor control, poor stability. And the ultimate question, so is there a benefit? Well, yeah, you get your heart rate up, but certainly you're getting up actually causing maybe a bit of trauma in the body. And the last question is, the ultimate question of all questions is there a better alternative? Is there a better, safer, more effective way to get the results that you want? So if you want strength in the legs, is there a better exercise? Well, of course there is. Just go and do some good controlled squats with some good heavy dumbbells where you can progress the load with weights or barbells or deadlifts with, down here. Then that is going to be far more effective in increasing strength than doing burpees. If you want strength in the upper body, is there a better exercise than doing push-ups with a big break in between by doing squats? Yes, just do the push-ups. Or if you want more strength, where you want to increase the load more than your body weight, then do some dumbbell bench presses or dips with your body weight where you don't have the feet on the ground. And if you need stronger, then do barbell and progress the weight. So yes, if you want strength, they are far more effective exercises. If you want cardiovascular fitness, is there a better way to do that? We can get your heart rate up, really get you fit, maybe in the upright position, rather than getting you fit through that weird transition. Now I can get you spinning on your head or spinning on your back and keep spinning and you get tired, but it's sort of getting fit doing something really awkward. You might be better off getting fit by maybe doing some running or some interval sprints or doing some hill sprints or just doing jump squats. At least for jump squats I can maintain good form while driving the muscles, just doing repetitive jump squats, without compromising my back into this position to get down the ground. I just keep it there and I just do a minute of jump squats or 30 seconds of jump squats. And maybe I do 30 seconds of jump squats, 30 seconds of push-ups, 30 seconds of jump squats, 30 seconds of push-ups. Or maybe 10 jump squats, 10 push-ups, 10 jump squats, 10 push-ups. So now I'm really working the two parts of the exercise that are most vital, which is the squat and the push-up, and I'm minimizing the transition. At the moment, the transition is the main part that gets you tired, rather than the squats and the push-ups. So one way to maybe change the burpee, if you want to keep doing that, have that transition in there, maybe 5 jump squats, 5 push-ups, 5 jump squats, 5 push-ups. Now you're not getting that repetitive nature in that awkward position, or 10 jump squats, 10 push-ups. Now you're not getting that repetitive nature in that awkward. You're minimizing the high risk area, and the high risk area is that transition. And that is the area that will hurt people's back. And it certainly has hurt mine in the past, and has hurt, if I do that now, it'll hurt my back and my knees, because I do have arthritis in the knees as well. So is there a better exercise if I want strength? Yeah, dumbbell squats, barbell squats, lunges, deadlifts. Strengthening up the body, absolutely. Bench presses, dumbbell presses, push-ups, dips. Just isolate it strong. Is there a better way to get fit? Yeah, maybe just do sprints on the treadmill, hill sprints, or get on a bike and do sprints. At least I can maintain good form and good safety and good technique with good stability. If I want to keep doing this movement, maybe I can adapt it by doing 5 jump squats or 10 jump squats, 10 push-ups. At least I'm minimizing that high-risk transition area. So yes, there are better options for you if you're trying to get the result, the same result, if not a better result, with minimizing the chances of injury. Because the number one rule I teach all of my exercise professionals is do not hurt your client. That is being negligent. And if you're giving someone an exercise where there's a component in that exercise that yes, it may give them certain results, but the consequence of that is I'm causing more trauma, more damage, more stress on the body that could lead to an injury or possibly will lead to an injury. There'll be a lower back, or there'll be shoulder, or there'll be knee, or whatever it might be. Then you have to remove that. I'm not going to buy a car that gets me to A to B that possibly has the chance of ending up in the ditch because there's a risk of wearing out the treads of the tyre, or wearing out the brake pads, or the accelerator cable breaking, or the steering goes off. I'm going to minimise this. I want a safe car that gets me from A to B the best way I can possibly do without crashing. And I'm sure you as an exercise professional, your clients want you to take their body from being unfit and unhealthy to fit and healthy, or maybe from fit and healthy to an elite level performance for their sport without causing injury. Because if you're an athlete and you're injured, you're not competing. If you're the general population, you're injured, you're probably not training. Therefore, you're going to be going backwards. So please don't compromise your client or yourself's health just because it's a fashionable exercise, just because it's a trendy exercise. They're the fashion exercises, and you see them all over Facebook, and there's lots of crazy ones out there, and I'll go through them from an anatomical, physiological point of view. This is not my opinion, it's not Kman speaking, this is anatomy speaking, and if you want, I'm very happy to go down and even do a deeper level, which I'm not going to do in this video, of what actually happens from a skeletal and a joint and a ligament and a cartilage and a disc and a menisci point of view, what's actually happening in the joint. Because if your joints are worn out and your joints are actually damaged, then you can't use the muscles anyway, because the joint is what the muscle uses to leverage movement on. If the joint's broken, if the axle of the car is broken, it doesn't matter how good your treads or your tyres are, if the axle is broken, the car's going absolutely nowhere. So something to think about. Maybe you may make some adaptations to your program or what you give your clients. You can still make them effective. You can make them even more effective, but take that safety issue out or that risk out, because the number one rule is you do not want to hurt your client. Because if you're hurting your client or hurting yourself, then that's the end of training anyway.